Hey everybody, Mr. Zimbrick here. I thought I would do a quick chalk talk about Punnett squares, inheritance patterns, genotypes, phenotypes, and all of those wonderful things. So this is an opportunity for you to get some more practice with them, and also if you happen to miss class that day, it's an opportunity for you to learn about them. So the main topic again today is going to simply be this, Punnett squares. So Punnett squares are an easy way for us to determine the probability of what kind of, basically what kind of traits our children might have. And in this case, I thought we could do a Punnett squares about traits relating to dragons, because dragons are awesome. Okay? So, in order to do any Punnett square, the first thing that you probably need to do is figure out what the heck kind of trait we're dealing with. Okay? Dragons are going to have lots of different traits. Can they breathe fire? Can they fly? Do they have wings? Do they have claws? All of these wonderful things. We also need to know, if it's not supplied to us, or we should be able to figure out what kind of inheritance pattern these particular traits exhibit. You know, are they dominant? Are they codominant? Are they incomplete dominant? So we need to know the pattern of inheritance, and then we also need to be able to figure out, well, that's a bad line. What are all the possible genotypes that we could have from our parents? And what are the different possibilities of the phenotypes then? So up here, we're going to have, we'll write in, how about geno for genotype, geno, and then here we're going to write down the phenotypes. All right, so let's look at our first trait then. Our first trait, I'm going to say, is it fire breathing? Does the dragon have the ability to breathe fire on people? This is a very important trait for dragons because it's what makes them scary. And the fire-breathing gene is actually going to come in two different varieties. So it has two alleles. It has a big F, capital F, and little f. And its pattern of inheritance is going to be complete dominance, meaning that if you have one of the capital F alleles, you are going to be able to breathe fire. So let's look at the different possibilities of genotypes. We might have capital F, which is homozygous dominant. We might have capital F, which would be heterozygous. And then last but not least, we could also have little f, which would be homozygous recessive. So next thing we need to do is figure out what kind of phenotypes might arise from these genotypes. The phenotype, remember, is going to be the observable characteristic that that gene gives rise to. So in this case, since we have a complete dominance pattern, if we have capital F, we are going to be able to breathe fire. So I'm going to draw some fire there. All right, that kind of looks like fire, right? Okay, if we have capital F, we also will be able to breathe fire. There's some more fire. And little f in this case means nope, we do not have any fire. So I think for this one, I'm just going to put bummer, sad face, no fire. Okay, so this dragon might be a little bit safer, but you know, it's not going to be as frightening. So next part, the actual Punnett square part. Going to make a nice big Punnett square here. Oh, I don't like that line. Let's try this one more time. Okay, so last but not least, we need to figure out what kind of alleles is dad giving us, what kind of alleles is mom giving us. So let's pretend for a minute that dad actually can't breathe fire. Dad is little f, and mom is a fire breather, and she is going to be heterozygous. So then we go over to our chart here, and we're going to put in both of dad's alleles and both of mom's alleles. All right, and then we just go through each box and we say, okay, big F, little f, that's what this box will have. That's what this box will also have because they're the same. And then over here, we're going to have little f, and again, little f, little f. Now we can go through, since we already made this beautiful little chart over here, and we can analyze what are the outcomes of each of these progeny that they could potentially have. A big F, little f is going to give us the fire breathing ability. So we can draw some fire here. I think my fire is getting worse as we go. Here we have some more, big F, little f. We said that heterozygous over here also gives us fire. So here's some fire. And then we have over here, little f, little f, little f, little f. These two homozygous recessive are going to give us no fire at all, which is sadly not a great trait for dragons. Okay, so we just analyzed fire breathing as one of the traits for dragons. I'm going to pause it here and get the screen reset, and then we're going to look at one more trait. Great, so the next trait that I wanted to look at is going to be, does the dragon have wings? Wings also a very important part of being a dragon. You need to be able to fly over the towns and the cities to terrify all the citizens. So wings is definitely something our dragons are going to want to have. However, depending on their genotype, maybe they don't. So we'll take a look at wings here. And we're going to have two alleles for this one as well, the capital W and then the lowercase w. And one little hint I would give you guys as you're doing these problems is that if you have a letter that looks similar, capitalized and lowercase, is try to do it in a way that distinguishes them. Because if we end up getting something like this and we can't tell if one's bigger, one's smaller, we're going to run into trouble when we're doing our Punnett squares. So in this case, what I did is I made my W, my lowercase w, have kind of a curled edge to it, and that way it makes it easier for me to tell. Okay, and then what we're going to have for wings, the pattern of inheritance is going to be, hold on, it's going to be incomplete dominance. And again, incomplete dominance is what happens when we can get these intermediaries where we might have, in the case of the flower, for example, you might have really red if you have homozygous dominant. You might have white if you have homozygous recessive genotype. And then if you have the heterozygous genotype, you're going to get pink because that's something that's in between. So let's take a look at our possible genotypes here again. We could have capital W, capital W. We could have capital W, lowercase w, and then lowercase, lowercase. All right? And now let's go and look at what these different phenotypes are. For the capital W, we are going to get a nice big wing that is going to be able to fly everywhere. This is the kind of wing that dragons love. For capital W, lowercase w, we're going to get little stubby wings. So the wing is still going to be present in our dragon, but it's just not going to be able to get us off the ground. And then lowercase w, in this case, we're not going to have any wings. We're just going to have a smooth back with no wings, okay? So in one case, we have the stubby wing. One case, we have this nice, beautiful wing. And here, we got nothing, okay? So let's look at the possibilities then. Let's say that we have mom who is, or rather dad, who in this case, let's make dad, how about heterozygous for this trait? And we'll make mom, how about, let's make mom homozygous recessive. So dad, we already know, is going to have a wing shape that looks something like this. And mom is going to have a wing shape that is completely lacking, no wings. Okay, so what we do again is we go up here, we put dad's alleles right here on this side. We'll put mom's alleles across the top. And then we'll look and see what are the different combinations we can get. Capital W, lowercase w. Here we're going to get two lowercase. Here we're going to get capital and lowercase and lowercase, lowercase. Okay, so if we check it out, here we have the heterozygous. So we are going to get a dragon that has the little stubby wings. Here we have lowercase, lowercase. This is a dragon with no wings. Here again, heterozygous, we can see from our chart that we get the stubby wings, and then here again, no wings at all. So in this case, we would say that the possible outcomes is that we would have complete, if we had homozygous dominant, there is a 0% chance of that happening. If we have wanted to know if our children were going to be heterozygous, there is a 1, 2 out of 4, so that would be a 50% possibility. And for the homozygous recessive, that is also going to be 50%. A 1 in 2 chance that we're going to get dragons with no wings. Okay, so that is an example of incomplete dominance in dragon wings. Okay, our last type of trait that the dragons might have, we're going to call this one armor scaling. Armored scaling is going to help our dragons defend themselves, if they have it, from arrows and all sorts of different projectiles. So armored scaling makes them pretty tough. Armored scales. And this is going to be conferred by an allele that we'll say is capital A, which will give our dragon a very hardy metallic-like scale. But they could also have another gene, or the same gene could also be lowercase a, which is going to give the scale more of a, how about more of like a rubbery texture where an arrow could easily go through it. So in this case, our pattern of inheritance is also going to be called, or pattern of dominance is going to be called codominant. And codominant, if you remember, means that if there is a heterozygous genotype, we could have both of these types of scales. We could have the heavily armored scale, the metallic scale, or the rubberized scale, that is the lowercase a. All right, let's go through and do the same thing that we've been doing. We could have possible genotypes of capital A, capital A. We could have the heterozygous genotype, capital A, little a, and we could have the homozygous recessive, little a, little a. Now the phenotypes here is something that we could go over. In the case of the capital A, here's our scales, and if this was the case, we would have all of these scales would be armored. So armored, I'm just going to shade in. If they have shading, that means that they're metallic. They cannot be pierced by any sorts of arrows, projectiles, crossbow, anything. Okay, makes them very tough. Now, if we have capital A, little a, and it's a codominant trait in terms of its pattern, then we're going to have scales just like normal. However, some of them will be metallic and some of them are going to be rubbery, I guess. So in this case, maybe this one is metallic, this one's metallic, maybe this one's metallic, this one's metallic, and this one's metallic. Okay, and then the ones that aren't colored in are going to be the rubbery ones that aren't as protective. Similarly then, if we go down here, we've got our scaling. Again, I'll draw this in. And in this case, if we have a homozygous recessive pattern or genotype, all of our scales are going to basically be like rubber and they could easily be pierced by an arrow. Now, let's look again at our parents. We're going to say that dad is heterozygous, and we'll say that mom is heterozygous, which means that they are both going to have a phenotype that looks like this right here. Okay, we're going to go to our Punnett square. We're going to plug these in, capital A, little a for dad, capital A, little a for mom, and then we just figure out the various combinations. Capital A, lowercase a, capital A, lowercase a, and lowercase. Okay, so now we've built up our chart. We have our Punnett square filled in, and we can just use this over here to figure out the phenotypes. Here we're going to have all armored, scaling. Capital A, little a, we found out, is we're going to have this sort of calico pattern where it's going to be partially armored, partially not. So we'll call that partially armored. And then little a is all rubbery scales. Okay, so if these two parents decided to have a child dragon, a baby dragon, then the chances of them having armored scales and being very safe from, the humans that they're trying to terrorize is actually going to be a 1 in 4 chance. So that means we've got a 25% chance that their child is going to have armored scales. For the big A, little a, the heterozygous, we have 2 out of the 4 that it's going to be partially armored, partial. And then for little a, we have also a 25% chance. Oh, I just realized this should be 50. We have a 25% chance of these rubbery scales. So if these were concerned parents, they might be afraid that, if they're going to have a baby dragon together, they wouldn't want it to have rubbery scales because that might mean that it's not going to be very safe out in the world. So that might be something for them to consider. Okay, so we've looked at today 3 different patterns of inheritance in terms of complete dominance, codominance, and or codominance, complete dominance, and incomplete. And we looked at armored scaling, we looked at wing type, and we looked at the ability to breathe fire. So in the future, you guys will be doing some homework with these problems, and I hope this video helped you kind of understand how to go about solving different problems like this. So if you have any more questions, please let me know, and have a good day. Thank you for listening.